This is a passage on how Monsanto is introducing its new proprietary maize called as the Roundup Ready corn, and the fact that it has been given permission to do its startup work. Uh, this type of corn is herbicide tolerant and it does not give the conventional advantages that you expect from a crop like higher yield, no protection against disease, toleration to saline soil, so on. The reason why it is doing it is uh, it has got genes that allow it to tolerate the poisons of the herbicide Roundup. And interestingly, Roundup is a herbicide that also is marketed only by Monsanto. So Roundup is an herbicide. Okay, so these are some of the critical information that we have. Now, the whole strategy is that Monsanto is selling Roundup, a herbicide. Now, in order to kind of make sure that it gets double profit, it's also selling this Roundup Ready corn. So, it is actually doing a double killing in the process and hence making more profits for itself. Herbicide tolerance, because it's been promoted so heavily by Monsanto across the world, it has become such a common trait that herbicide tolerance is the single most commonly prevalent trait in the cultivation of GM crops. And GM crops, we know that Monsanto is one of the key players. The reason why herbicide tolerance has come in is because in industrial countries they don't have many people or there's a shortage of labor. Hence, weeding is a problem. So the only way to kill weeds is through spray using some mechanized systems. And when that happens, it's important that they must have a strain of crop that can sustain against the herbicides. So but the entire process of aerial spraying, as it is mentioned here, is ecologically and wastefully destructive method. In developing countries, however, since the land holdings are all small, this can have a very big effect on affecting the uh, bordering ecosystems to fields and natural biodiversity. So it might actually work against the interests of the farmers and the ecology in developing countries. So this is the summary of the passage. So let's now look at the questions. Why has Monsanto decided to introduce it? So if you look at the first three choices, none of them actually are referring to the key issue. The key issue is to maximize profits and hence D is the appropriate option. With reference to the passage, consider the following statement. The first statement is nowhere is it said that India actually needs a Roundup Ready maize. So this is not the option. Mechanization in industrial countries has spawned the issue of weed control. Hence, and the real issue also is that the landholdings are so huge that mechanization is a must. RCGM is a corrupt institution. Nowhere is it being said. Hence, the appropriate option is only choice B. According to the passage, which the following can be classified as a weed. According to the passage, anything that is not Roundup ready is a weed, because the moment you kind of spray Roundup, everything else except the Roundup ready corn is going to be killed. Hence, only choice A is correct. Why is the herbicide tolerance the single most prevalent trait in the cultivation of GM crops? In the GM crop market, Monsanto is the biggest one. Monsanto is doing all the marketing. Hence, you find that since the herbicide Roundup for GM crops is also promoted by Monsanto, you find that choice C is the correct answer. Right? That is the reason why herbicide tolerance is the single most trait that Monsanto has promoted across the world. How would ecosystems in developed countries be affected if Roundup Ready maize is introduced therein? The choice A is actually fairly trivial. It's not about blurring the boundaries. That's not the major issue. The major issue is it will severely affect floral diversity in the vicinity. So anything outside of that field or anything which is not Roundup ready is going to be severely affected. Hence, the floral diversity will get affected. It will induce herbicide resistance. Nowhere is he talking about inducing. So, and it will poison the soil. This is also not being spoken about. Hence, choice B is the most appropriate option. Now let's look at the next question. What are the reasons for the introduction of new varieties of crops into a country? Obviously, among the different things, ability to crossbreed with indigenous variety, this is not being talked about. Tolerance to certain condition, and definitely it talks about resistance to diseases. So one fungal infection is a kind of a disease. So the among the choices, choice C is the most. This passage talks about economic disparity having increased between the in the period 2007 to 2010 in the OECD countries, and it gives data about how the top 10% of people across 33 OECD countries earning more compared to the bottom 10% over this period, suggesting that the inequalities has increased. The largest differences also have been found in a few countries, uh, and it seems to be a little lower in the Scandinavian countries. The third paragraph is referring to how countries where there have been euro crisis, they have been very badly affected during this period, and the income inequalities have increased in these countries more. The fourth paragraph is talking about how the income inequality as a measure is ranked across countries, where you see the top five most unequal countries were Chile, Mexico, Turkey, United States, and Israel. Among these countries that are being surveyed, Portugal uh, is the worst among the European nations. Then the fifth paragraph is talking about how the non OECD countries have dealt with this in a slightly better fashion. The economic crisis has not affected them so drastically. During this time, they have reduced poverty levels. However, the levels of income inequalities has been high even in these countries. And the last paragraph talks about how welfare support has kind of alleviated slightly the disparity, which means had the welfare support not been there, uh, due to deployment of certain fiscal packages, there is a likelihood that the inequality would have been much more, and relative poverty would have uh, been worse off. So this is the basically the main points of the passage. Now let's look at the questions. Consider the following statements in reference to the passage. India is a non-OECD country. Uh, this part is true, but the second part of the statement is not true. So statement 1 cannot be correct. Statement 2, non-OECD countries have reduced poverty. There is still a high level of income inequality. This is true directly from the passage, hence choice B is correct. Now if you look at this question here, the first statement is directly given in the passage. From a figure of 9 it has moved to 9.5, which means it is actually moved by a factor of 0.5. The second statement, welfare groups have arrested the, so it could be more like saying welfare measures or welfare support would have been more appropriate here. If you look at this, it is arrested, it is alleviated a little bit, hence both 1 and 2 are correct. Now moving to the next question. Which of the following can be said, rightly said about the OECD nations? This is not true, because we are just doing a survey about the OECD countries, how they have been impacted. We are not saying that they are the worst hit. Second statement directly contradicts what is stated in the passage. The third statement is again contradicted because they talk about poverty levels reducing, but not that income inequality has reduced. So the appropriate statement is choice D. So what constitutes a comprehensive proof? So from this it can be directly seen that C gives you the measure of income inequality. Fairly comprehensive. The top 10% by bottom 10%, it's almost that factor is 9.5. That tells you that there's a huge difference between the top and the bottom. The other statements are either irrelevant statements or they are not comprehensive enough. For example, statement A and D are not comprehensive enough. Statement B is a irrelevant statement to the given context. According to the brother, which of the following statements is incorrect? Income equality was more. We are not talking about income equality anyway, so this statement is definitely not correct as per the passage. Italy has less income inequality than Portugal. Yes, because Portugal has the worst income inequality as far as European nations are concerned. This statement is true. There is not much difference between incomes of Norwegian workers. In Norway, the income disparity is fairly low, and if you're talking about the workers themselves, it is likely to be low. Philanthropy has partly helped bridge the rich-poor divide. Maybe philanthropy is not the right word to be used here. It should have been more like welfare support. Anyway, from among the statements, the statement 1 is obviously wrong. Hence, the correct option is A. Consider the following statements in reference to the passage. Fiscal stimulus packages are a sure means of alleviating. They are not a sure means, definitely not. There are, if properly directed, they might help in alleviating relative property, but can't be saying that it's a sure means. The euro crisis has had a major determinant in increasing. That is true because it has really made the countries which have suffered euro crisis uh, become far more aggravated in terms of the income disparity. So statement 2 is correct. So among these two, had this not been a sure measure, we could have marked 1 and 2, but here the appropriate option is only B. This passage is about rewriting history, and specific instance has been picked up about how certain projects have been shelved, or NCERT has directed certain parts of school textbooks to be to erase parts of the textbook. So this entire passage is an opinion by someone about how history needs to be rewritten, if at all, why it needs to be rewritten, what are the critical perspectives that historians take while rewriting history. So is more about getting into whys and hows rather than taking any specific instance and talking about any specific event. The few things that talks about past is not a unitary truth. It needs to be changed and discover new meanings over different periods in time, and also to even look at limits of earlier frameworks of analysis and keep moving that out. That's how the enrichment of the concept of past will increase. So this is what this paragraph is talking about. The next paragraph is talking about the act itself is not objectionable, but how it is written is, I think, a critical thing. Examine the nature of. So here you're talking about nature of rewriting. Nature of rewriting, the assumptions. Those are the important things to be looked at, not the idea that history is getting rewritten, because that's a normal process of how we make meaning out of history. The last paragraph we're talking about the practice of rewriting history. Historians history of India has got implicated in the projects of colonial knowledge. What it basically means is we're kind of stuck in the past, and a lot of the contexts have been colonial. A lot of the institutions. So it is the legacy is so deeply embedded that it becomes a little difficult for us to get out of it and create more better conceptions or better interpretations of our modern history. So this are the critical things that this thing is talking about. So if you look at the passages, the process of rewriting history becomes tainted when creativity comes in. It doesn't say this, right? Creativity has nothing got to do with it. It's the way history is rewritten that brings the taint into the process. The repressive dominant frameworks of history should seldom be reorganized. We are not talking about it, we are saying that always look for reinterpretations. NCERT directed to delete certain passages from the existing books does not point towards Uh, on the contrary, is saying that it seems to be pointing towards some hidden agendas. So the author is not saying any of these statements. So none of them is appropriate. The author advises historians to rework the accepted notions of the past with a view, obviously, to uh, look at new meanings, new perspectives. That's what the author is talking about. It's got nothing to do with this. Creative and history writing are two different aspects, should be kept separate. He's not mentioning any of this. He's not saying you cannot bring creativity into history writing. Growth of history is clearly independent of scrutinizing perspective. It's not independent, that is, he's not saying that. So, choice A is most appropriate. The author is not accusing anybody, is not being critical of any process, right? And is actually trying to give a meaning to how history is rewritten. So between the two here, I think subjective is more valid than a very objective. Uh, so it's not a issue that he's picking up. He's just picking up the fact that why should history be rewritten, or if at all it is going to be rewritten, what are the things that need to be looked at? What is it that the modern Indian history is struggling against? Choice B and C are obviously out. So if it's going to be between choice A and D. So only difference that you see in choice A is in sources and institutions of research are not its own, though the conceptions are Indian. Actually, the passage seems to be saying that there are some concepts that also that are foreign. So it's not all Indian. Hence, there's a lot of colonial uh, attachment to the way we look at things. Hence, the most appropriate option is option D. Which of these constitutes an element that needs to be scrutinized while examining the nature of writing? So, I think the critical thing is while examining the nature of writing, the author very clearly says, right, look at the process how it is written, right? So the mode in which knowledge is validated. I think that is not the hidden philosophical meaning. Is not talking about that. Is not talking about acts that enrich our conception of the past. So when you're looking at the nature of writing, it's about uh, the way it is written. Is it how is the knowledge is getting validated? Hence, the most appropriate option in this question is this passage here has reference to the address that Obama made over the inauguration weekend, and it uh, kind of has references to the difference of opinions that Republicans and Democrats have been having over the past. So here it talks about Barack Obama making a hint that is going to go in for a fairly liberal policy agenda for the next 4 years. Is repeatedly invoked we the people to kind of give stressing equality of all people, uh, which means like the gay rights, the environmental campaigns, gun control legislations, immigration reform, all of which have brought the Democrats at loggerheads with the Republicans. Is also the next paragraph talking about his tribute to the recent gunshot victims, or I mean gun shooting events, and promising to kind of take care of the future of Americans. So here he's hinting at some reform on the long pending gun control legislation. So he has also had his pot shots at the Republicans, where is here talking about mistaking absolutism for principle, right? That's what he seems to indicate Republicans are doing, that their absolutist policies are hidden under the garb of principle. Substitution of spectacle for politics is kind of trying to make the Republicans look like jokers, and are treating name calling as a recent debate. So he's actually taking pot shots at the Republicans in this statements. So though his speech seems to get a little more conciliatory, right? There are obviously some signs of willingness there is not so much of acidity in his criticism of the Republicans, because for those who are aware of the background of this information, the Republicans and Democrats have been having a stalemate in the Congress about some of the reforms that Obama wants to kind of go through. The "We the People" clause in the US Constitution has been affirmed most appropriately by the US President by which of the following assertions? He is actually talking about policy reforms in the field of immigration, environmental rights, gay rights, and economic inequality to indicate that we the people kind of implies an equality of all. So the most appropriate option among all the options that we have here is choice A. The domain of politics must also serve as a natural perpetrator of spectacles for the masses. Then your second statement, absolutist politics is what shall enable us to act in a. So this is exactly what Obama is saying should not happen, and this is exactly what he is criticizing the Republicans in the speech. So he is going to obviously vehemently refute each of these options. Hence, the appropriate answer is choice C. What new directions planned by Obama? Is not talking about burning all bridges with the Republicans. He is not got so aggressive. He is not rubbishing the cause of the Occupy movement. On the contrary, he seems to kind of have slight empathy towards them. Implement liberal policies regarding various issues. This definitely is the most appropriate option. This passage is talking about FDA and pharma sector, right? And increasing acquisitions that are happening. And since most of them are trying to acquire Indian pharma companies, Commerce Ministry has been trying to tighten some norms, partly rejected by the Union Cabinet. And then we have the cause for concern is most of these companies are taking over Indian firms that are in the manufacture of rare and critical medicines. So the whole idea of FDI being encouraged in the pharma sector is to kind of make the norms a little more attractive for overseas players to invest in India. That's the entire approach that the government has taken. So let's look at the questions based on this. What are the problems plaguing the pharma sector? Uh, this is definitely not the problem. There has been sufficient amount of FDI coming in. This is the problem where you're saying the multinationals are taking over the local firms. FDA has come into the fact that FDA has come into the sector in brownfield sector is not an issue. The issue is they're actually putting in money to take over these brownfield pharma companies. Hence, the appropriate option is B and not C. Which of the following statements is true? The Union Cabinet is undisputed. It does not have undisputed authority over FDI. For example, if a company wishes to invest in a greenfield project or a startup, it's automatic approval. It doesn't have to go through Union Cabinet. So statement 1 is wrong. Foreign multinationals seem to be less inclined to invest in startups than that is the fact, and that's the cause for concern. Hence, option B is the only option. In the light of the passage, which of the following statements is true? DIPP is responsible for conducting industrial service. The Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion is what conducts surveys and looks at. It helps the different departments do commerce department and take decisions on public policy. Department of Commerce and Industry wants to safeguard the pharma sector. This is true, right? If a multinational wants to invest in the establishment of a pharma company, it will have to take permission from FIPB. Not necessary, because if it is a investment in a greenfield project, which means it's starting off a pharma company in India, it gets an automatic approval. So this statement is incorrect, and government welcomes foreign investment but prefers to do it in a regulated fashion, especially so when it comes to brownfield projects. We got three statements here and we got four choices. We have to see which of these choices is correct. It rains only if it is cloudy. So rain means must have been cloudy, right? Don't assume that if it is not raining, it means it is not cloudy, right? Is a wrong conclusion. But raining means it has to be cloudy. Okay, it's never cloudy when it is raining. So if I say cloudy, it's never cloudy when it is sunny. If it is, say, this is cloudy, this is sunny, these are two completely disjoint sets. So there will be no days where it is both cloudy and sunny. So that intersection is 0. In Brazil, it's always sunny, right? Now let's look at the Brazil statement. If it is always sunny, right? If it's always sunny, it's never cloudy. If it is never cloudy, it's never going to rain. Hence, in Brazil, it never rains. So, statement C is actually wrong. Let's go to statement A. If it is cloudy, it rains. We can say that rains will come only if it is cloudy. It doesn't mean that on all days when it is cloudy, it's going to rain. Hence, statement A is wrong. If it is not cloudy, it is sunny. This is also not true. So, if you look at not cloudy is going to be outside this set. So if it is, so not cloudy includes a situation of it being sunny, but there can be a lot of other instances, other types of days. Hence, statement B is wrong. If it is not cloudy, it does not rain. Obviously, it rains only if it is cloudy. It rained means it should have been cloudy. It is not cloudy means it cannot rain. Hence, appropriate choice is D. One way of solving this question is through simple equations. I'm focusing on the method 2 here. Since it's taking 1 more hour, so the total distance by speed is time. So if I say the initial speed is SI and the final speed is SF, you see that these two are actually differing by a value which is equal to 1. So these numbers that we have in the denominator here must be such that I get one multiple and then subsequently the next multiple if it appears on the tables. So if I take 1200, by reducing 200, if I am getting two successive multiples, right, one should be 600, the other should be 400. So this gives me 2, this gives me 3. So I see that the two multiples that is going one after the other and they are differing by a value which is equal to 200. Hence, the original time should have been 2 hours. None but the affluent are invited for the event. So if you're looking at invitees for the event, so if you have to be an invitee to the event, you have to you have to be a subset of affluent invited. Some of the invitees for the event are sponsors. Some of them are sponsors. All sponsors are given a gift in recognition of their contribution. Some of them could be sponsors. Some of them, all sponsors are given a gift in recognition of their contribution. Right. So if you are a sponsor, you get a gift. All affluents are given a gift. This is definitely not true. So there could be some affiliate who are not sponsors, hence this need not be. All sponsors of the event are given a gift. This is almost repeating the statement that is there. All invitees for the events are sponsored. This is obviously not, none of the thing can be drawn. So actually the question should have been better worded. Choice B is the most appropriate option. It is actually a restatement of what is already given in the question. This is a nice logical question based on the concept of folding of papers to make cubes. So if we name these squares as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and if you kind of fold them and I can convert this into a three-dimensional form, so we have a cube here. So imagine the position at the bottom happens to be A. So you find that this side, this face is B, this face here is F, right? Then we have the face on this side is C, this is this face, opposite is going to be D and the top is going to. So if you're talking about the face that is exactly opposite to C, it is So this question is fairly simple. It's saying all PG colleges in this location. So whatever is in this location, those PG colleges are all certified. Some of those PG colleges in this location have multiple branches. All PG colleges more than 1000 students have multiple branches. All colleges are not UGC certified. Okay. Now let's look at each of the statements. Only UGC certified colleges are present in this location. This is definitely not, this is a straight away rejected choice. Similarly, if you look at the last year, most of the PG colleges have more than, nowhere is it said. So let's not get into things that are, colleges which are not certified by UGC cannot have multiple branches. Ignore this. So the obvious choice that is left is choice B, which is true. Some UGC certified PG colleges with multiple branches are present in this location, because all PG colleges in this location are UGC certified. These are some of those population of PG colleges, and some of these colleges have multiple branches, so you find that statement B is the most appropriate. Humanity went into debt with nature, having used up all that the Earth's natural systems can produce this year. People had already demanded from Earth all the ecological services it can provide in the whole year, from filtering the main greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, to producing the raw material for food. We now use in less than 10 months the amount of resources it takes 12 months for nature to generate. Based on the above statement, which one of the following inferences is correct? The needs of the human beings are greater than the available resources. This looks a little too generic statement. Humanity is using up ecological services faster than nature can provide. This is obviously a very clear inference that we have from the statements. Humanity will have to repay the debt. Nowhere we are talking about repaying debt. Maybe the way we repay debt could be very disastrous. In the last 2 months of this year, no raw material will be available. I think it is a little off the beat choice. So the appropriate answer is B. In this data, we have been given a table which has got exports and imports in $1,000,000, and this is for the financial year 2012-2013. We have also been defined that the balance of payment, the term balance of payment is defined as excess of imports over the exports. And there are two questions. The first question is, during the given period, balance of payment was maximum in which of the months? We have to choose between January, October, November and July. So let's look at January. In January, the balance of payment is almost equal to 20K in million US dollars. And then in the month of October, it is almost 20.6 thousand million US dollars. Now we'll look at the other two options. We have uh, November. November is less than 20,000 million dollars, so I need not calculate it. Similarly, if you look at July, we have less than 20,000 US dollars. So when we look at the values, I am not actually finding out the exact values, but estimating the closest approximations. Hence, you see that October has to be the appropriate option. This question is asking us to find out the total balance of payment in million US dollars from the months October to December in the given year. So let's do this process also through an estimation. So if you look at the 3 years, October, November, December, if you look at the exports, exports are approximately 24, 23, 25. If you add that, that becomes 72. It is something like 72.7 thousand million US dollars. Whereas if I talk about imports, imports is something like 44, 41, 43. That makes it 128 point. If you look at the rest of it, it is 129.2 thousand million US dollars. So if I look at the difference of these two, the difference of these two is somewhere close to approximately approximately 57,000 million US dollars. So if you look at the options, the closest option in this is choice D, because the options are very far apart. I am not actually finding out the exact value. Hence the appropriate option has to be D. This looks like a fairly easy question. Here we find that the each of these elements is actually moving by one step, and the way it is happening is, you can see this as a reflection of this arrow, and then it's going to the other vertex, and again it's a reflection, and from this vertex it is moving to this vertex, again it's a reflection. So obviously if I have to use the same logic, so it must again go back to this vertex and it must be a reflection. So if it is a reflection, it cannot be any of these choices. So if at all there is a choice that is correct, by using the same rule, it has to be choice A. You could also check the same rule whether it is valid for the other elements too. So let me take one example. If you take this element, it is, if you put a mirror here, it's a reflection here. Similarly, if you put one mirror here, this is getting reflected and it becomes this, and again a reflection, it becomes this. So if we use the same logic, it must go to this location, this vertex here, and it's got to be a reflection as shown in this element. Hence the appropriate option is A. This again is a easy question. Now if you actually look at the pattern, P, after P there should have been Q here. We are missing out Q, and then we have got the next two letters R and S. Then we are missing out T and U. Then we have two letters V and W as they appear in the alphabetical order. Then you are missing out X, Y and Z, three letters here. Then we have got A and B, two letters. Then we are missing out C, D, E, F, four letters, and then we got G and H. So, and then we by the same logic we must miss out I, J, K, L and M, five letters, and then we must have the next two letters, that is N and O. Hence the appropriate option has to be choice D. This question is based on the clockwise and movement of the shaded and the region which is dark. So if we look at movement along the row, you find that both the shaded and the dark portions are moving 3 steps in the clockwise direction. If you look along the column, you see that the shaded portion is moving 1 step clockwise and then 2 steps clockwise in both these two columns. Whereas if you look at the dark portion is moving 2 steps clockwise and again 2 steps clockwise. So if you look at the same pattern, we will see that only one of these choices is correct, and that choice happens to be choice B. This is a question based on the representation of data in the form of Venn diagrams. Here we have the circle A belonging to painters, the circle B belonging to professors, and the circle C belonging to doctors, and then we have the triangle T, which is males. So if you are looking at the region that represents doctors and professors, it is this complete region, and if they have to be male, then we have the region 7 plus 5 that represents people who are males, who are doctors, who are professors, and they could also be painters. But if I want to ignore painters too, I think this region which represents painters as well must be removed. So we are left with only the region 5. Hence the appropriate answer is C. This passage is how Tessa Connell's life is changed by the arrival of her love's brother, Cole Stone, and how Cole tested her limits and kind of forced her to think beyond her veil of mediocrity. Now let's look at the questions in the passage. What does to keep her head down mean? To keep her head down essentially means it's a it's a idiom to showcase shyness or not being outright. Hence, among the choices here, the most appropriate choice is choice B. How did Cole change Tessa's life? Though Cole had tormented her, he was also a number one enemy. That is not what changed Tessa's life. What changed Tessa's life was Cole had tested her by challenging her to her limits and to challenge her and made her get beyond her wheel of mediocrity. So option B is the most appropriate option. Which is the one who has come back? It is Jay Stone's brother, and the mention is only of Cole here. So obviously, the most likely name is Cole Stone. This passage is about the bravery of Grenadier Yogendra Singh Yadav, who, in spite of getting injured, finally managed to single-handedly silence the enemy guns. Now let's look at the questions. Why did Yogendra Singh Yadav crawl up to the enemy position? Obviously, the reason why he crawled up is he wanted to do it as silently as possible, and none of the choices A, B, or C are appropriate in this case. Hence, the correct option is choice D. What does the passage convey? The key message of the passage is to showcase the bravery of Grenadier Yogendra Singh Yadav, and it's not focusing on either statement A or C or D. Hence, the appropriate option is B. The focus of the passage is Yogendra Singh Yadav. The platoon was stalled. Stalled basically means stopped. Hence, the appropriate option is C. This is based on the incident involving Baleshwar and Roma, where Roma had met with an accident and she was sprawled by the side of the track. This passage is a description of this event. Now let's look at the questions. What seems to have happened to Roma in the passage above? So, from among the choices that you see, choice A, choice C, and choice D either look irrelevant or completely ridiculous. So, choice B is the most appropriate option. Based on the passage, which of these statements is correct? The two stations were in Thane and Mumbai. Baleshwar is younger than Roma. Baleshwar was concerned about Roma. None of the above. The fact that Baleshwar was worried that he was late, and also his response on seeing her sprawled by the side of the track, indicates that Baleshwar was definitely concerned about Roma, and C seems to be the most appropriate option. You are posted in a remote area. You have been trained to follow orders from your superior. Your superior threatens you with dire consequences if you do not run personal errands for him. You would. So from the four choices here, you need to use two choices that probably best represent the kind of reaction you would have. Try to assert yourself and speak to him openly. I think it's always good to speak one's mind. Organize a public revolt. This is definitely a very undesirable reaction. Hence, B should not be definitely done. Threaten to spill his secrets. The fact that you would threaten him to spill his secrets would also not hold good for you, because it can only snowball into worse situation. So one is about asserting yourself, and second is, if possible, taking help from a higher authority. These are the two options that you must obviously look for. You're the chief engineer responsible for the construction of a dam. You're able to finish the project in time. After a few months, however, the wall of the dam starts to show cracks. What would you do? 1. Accuse the contractor of not supplying quality material. It does not solve your problem anyway. Get the repairs done as soon as possible, then investigate the matter. I think the critical thing is action as soon as possible, and then the investigation can follow, because otherwise the dam is in danger of collapse. Wait for your manager to arrive at the scene and tell you what to do next. This is the other best option that you would do, because it's important for you to get instructions from the people who are actually on the field, at least to take their viewpoints, it is very critical. Wash your hands off the case and your job is done. And I think that is definitely not something as a chief engineer you would be expected to do. Hence, the appropriate options are B and C. You are participating in an international athletics event involving a team. You catch your teammate red handed while he was using a banned substance. The event is due in a couple of days. You would. So, among the four choices, I think the two options that you would exercise obviously are choice A and choice C. And between the two, choice C is the first one that you would do. Talk to the teammate, convince him otherwise. And in the event that it doesn't sort out the issues, I think it is important to apprise the head coach of the situation so that he is in know of the things. Hence, the appropriate options are C and A. You have a pet dog at home. It does not like the milkman who comes every day to deliver milk at your residence. One day, the dog bites the milkman. The same evening, your dog is found dead. The veterinarian examines the dog and says that your dog has died of food poisoning. You would. Uh, One of the obvious choices is ask the veterinarian for details. So, choice B is definitely there. And buying a new dog is a very relevant issue at this point in time. So, let me also not think about it. So, between the choice A and C, take the milkman to task and punish him severely because we do not know who is the culprit, so it might be a little too strong an action to take against milkman. Whereas if there is an element of doubt that it is a milkman who was a source of food poisoning, then if the thought lingers in the mind, it makes more sense to stop taking milk from him. Hence, the appropriate options are B and C. You're a manager of a team in your office. You're suspecting that some of the team members are shirking work and passing it on to other members, while they take full credit for the work once it is complete. You would impose harsh penalties for shirking work, ask some of the members to spy on the team, start randomly calling members, telling them you know what is happening, call members and tell them to explain their work in full. Among the choices, D seems to be the simplest thing to do. First, call them, talk to them, and ask them to explain their work. It is also some kind of an appraisal. Among the other choices, C seems to be the better of all the options because imposing harsh penalties is unjust on people who are working very hard. Asking some of the members to spy on the team creates tremendous sense of distrust, not something that you would like to build in your team. So among the choices, C seems to be the best choice. Hence, D and C are the best options. You're the captain of a basketball team. A member of your team argues with you regarding many team related decisions. You realize that his arguments are sometimes justified, but this is hampering your confidence, and the other teammates are also losing faith in you as a result. What will you do? So we have four choices. You will reprimand the person, you will tell him that if he has any difference of opinion, he must do it in private, you threaten him to mend his ways, or you try to tell him to resort to milder ways. Obviously, A and C are very extreme steps. You won't do that. Between choice B and D, you try to tell him to resort to milder ways of expressing. You're not against the fact that he is expressing opinions. This is far more accommodating to the person's views. You will tell him that he has, and if it still kind of persists, I think it's important to have a discussion in private. So you will tell him that if he has any differences of opinion with you, he should address them to you in private. So in the order of choices, it would be choice D full and then choice B. You're at a sports meet in which your nephew is participating in a 500-meter race. You notice that the child who was winning is tripped by another participant who eventually wins the race. You would do nothing as your nephew still did not win the race. Complain to the authorities about the winner. Motivate the child who was stripped to complain and support him. Narrate the incident to your nephew and criticize. So, among the choices, the first thing that you would do is to kind of tell the authorities what actually happened, and then if it still does not kind of make any difference, maybe you would ask the child to uh, go and uh, go and express his reservations about the winner to the authorities himself. So there are two options, option B and option C. These are the most appropriate. Choice A is irrelevant. Choice D also has nothing to do with your mode of action. That brings us to the end of this discussion of Mock 4. Thank you.